Welcome to our today's e-lecture on classifying research based on methods in literary and linguistic studies. Our today's e-lecture is the continuation of classifying research on the basis of purpose and method. And today we are going to discuss the classification of research in the fields of linguistics in literature on the basis of method. Method can be defined as the overall strategies followed to collect and analyze data. Our today's e-lecture will outline the basic tenets of quantitative research paradigm, and it will further discuss descriptive research design, correlational research design, causal comparative research design, and experimental research designs in the domains of quantitative research. In terms of classifying research based on the overall strategies followed to collect and analyze data, we have two helpful ways: the quantitative and the qualitative research methods. The quantitative research methods can be defined as the strategies followed for the collection and analysis of data to explain, predict, or control a phenomenon of interest. In this case, we describe the current conditions of variables in a study. We also investigate relationship of variables in a study, and we also study the cause and effects relationship of variables. In quantitative research paradigm, a paradigm can be defined as the belief with which the entire research is carried out. And this belief in quantitative methods are based on the assumptions that we live in a stable, uniform, and coherent world. We can measure, understand, and generalize about our world, and this perspective is generally regarded as positivistic perspective of research. The general characteristics of researches in the fields of linguistics and literature in quantitative paradigms are as under. First, quantitative researches in these respective domains are based on numerical data. It means we have number and we work with numbers in these researches. The second characteristic of quantitative methods or quantitative researches in linguistics and literature are the quantification of variables. It means that we have certain characteristic features which we quantify in for measurement. The third characteristic of quantitative method is the use of hypothesis and procedures. So in these researches, we use hypothesis which can either be true or false, and we also use the subsequent procedures associated with this hypothesis or set of hypotheses. The fourth characteristic of quantitative method is the use of manipulation and control to minimize the effect of factors that could interfere with the outcome of the research, especially when we are looking at relationship of cause and effect among different variables. We use manipulation and control. The next characteristic of quantitative method is the large number of participants in our researches. And along with that, we have structured responses, structured questions, for example, yes, no questions, or we have questions based on scales. Then we have statistical analysis. The data we obtain in quantitative methods or in quantitative researches in linguistics and literature are statistically analyzed. For example, means, variance, frequency, etc. Uh, the next characteristic of quantitative methods is the researcher who is considered to be an objective and detached observer. The researcher has nothing to do with whatsoever that is happening in the research field. And finally, we have the use of pencil and paper test, questionnaire, etc. in these kinds of researches. There are five basic designs in researches based on quantitative methods in the areas of literature and linguistics. These research designs are as under descriptive, correlational, causal comparative, and experimental. The purpose of descriptive research designs in qualitative methods is to describe the current status of a variable of interest. For example, what is the current situation of anxiety among the undergraduate learners of English as a second language? Or what are the attitudes of teachers and or learners towards the target language or towards the English language? To what extent students use the plural morphemes in present tense with third person singular pronoun? To what extent literary work is considered a source of pleasure by its readers? All these are examples of descriptive researches in quantitative designs based on describing the current situation of a variable. The second type of research in quantitative designs is called correlational research. In correlational research, we want to find out or discover the extent to which two or more variables are statistically related. In quantitative researches, a variable is regarded as a feature that varies and can be quantified and or measured. For example, we have gender. Gender can be quantified. For example, we assigned 1 to males and 2 to females. Or and in case of measurement, let's say we have a variable which is the CGPA of students. The example of correlational researches include what is the relationship between anxiety and GPA among language learners? Or what is the relationship? Is there a significant relationship between social class and linguistic variables? By linguistic variables, we mean when the same thing in a language is said differently by its speakers. And by social classes, we mean the distribution of groups among a society on the basis of their economical outcome. Next, we have is there a significant relationship between gender and the use of tags in a language? Okay. The most important thing in quantitative research designs and in correlational research is especially is that this design does not employ causation, or in other words, we are not looking for cause and effect relationship amongst variables. And if you look at these examples, we cannot predict a cause and a relationship between anxiety and GPA, social class and linguistic variables, gender, and the use of tags. Next, we have causal comparative researches. In causal comparative researches, we also explore relationships among variables that cannot be actively manipulated or controlled by the researchers. Uh, in other words, we have variables, but these variables, we cannot control them, we cannot manipulate them. And a good example of it is the post-traumatic stress disorder and monotonous speech. Let's suppose we want to establish relationship between these two variables, PTSD and monotonous speech. We cannot control or manipulate PTSD. Or the other is the impact of war on terror, on attitude towards learning the English language. Here, if we look, we cannot control or manipulate the impact of war on terror, which we are establishing a relationship of it with attitude towards learning the English language. An important characteristic of causal comparative research is that the independent variable has already been manipulated, or in other words, the one that affect the other, that variable is already manipulated, already changed. Okay, like in PTSD, the PTSD has occurred, it has already occurred, and we are looking its impact on monotonous speech. or in the impact of war on terror. The war on terror has already happened, and after it's happening, we are looking we are looking into its impact on the attitude of learners towards the English language. Finally, we have uh, experimental research design. This research design is widely used by researchers, especially in the field of linguistics. In this research, the purpose is to establish the cause and effect relationships between variables. And this type of study involves an independent and dependent variables. The independent variable is manipulated or controlled to observe changes in the dependent variables. The impact, for the examples are impact of direct method on the performance of language learners, or effect of online teaching on learners' grammatical mistakes in the teaching of English as a second language. If we look at these examples, in every research or in every research question or in every research topic, we have two variables, and the researcher control or manipulates the first variable in order to observe changes in the second variable. For example, impact of direct method on the performance of language learners. In this example, two groups are created. One group is taught with direct method, and the other group is taught in the traditional way, and then the outcome of these two groups, their performance is measured, and if there is a significant change, we establish a cause and effect relationship based on these changes. The other is the effect of online teaching on learners' grammatical mistakes in the teaching of English as a second language. Here again, we can create two groups. One group is manipulated, they are taught with online teaching, and the other group is taught in a traditional way. And then, based on their grammatical mistakes, if there is a change, we establish a cause and effect relationship between these variables. Finally, this is the end of our e-lecture. I want to acknowledge Microsoft Corporation for the provision of these templates being used in this e-lecture with corporation, along with corporation with Higher Education Commission. I also acknowledge the authors L.R. Gay and Jeffrey emails for their book Educational Research Competencies for Analysis and Application. My ideas of research were mainly developed from the ideas present in this book. And finally, I thank Pearson Publishing, whose teaching materials were pivotal in making of this e-lecture. With this, I say goodbye to all of you.